I want to say just thank you so much for like checking up on me. I really appreciate it because I know like I've been in previous like LSAT courses before, and some proctors or teachers don't really like check in like on a continual basis. It's usually me being the proactive one asking questions, but I haven't heard from them since, God knows when. So I really appreciate you checking in.
Well, of course, Taja, my pleasure. I really try to make this feel like a small, close-knit community. And I want you to feel like you can reach out to me anytime. I'm a real person. I'm not trying to be a huge mega corporation. I like to
Right,
work with
right.
a small number of highly devoted students who are really looking to make massive changes to their studying. And so I want to be part of that process to make it easier for you to study more effectively on your own.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. I'm very excited. That's why actually one of the reasons why I chose this course is because I know, like, even I just actually learned about it through emails you've been sending me, and I know you've been very consistent with it. So I was like, okay, let's check him out. So I know I needed dire help because the way I was doing things, it was, I don't know, something in my psychology and the way I was thinking wasn't registering. And it was something that was blocking me to progress forward into getting that score I wanted. So I knew I needed some kind of outside help, more like, that one-on-one connection help.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is that you can't always see your own blind spots.
Right.
But there is usually something, if you could figure out what it was, that could unlock the mindset shift for you to see the test from the test maker's perspective. That's what I'm trying to help you do. And so that's the guiding principle around all my courses, whether it's the live online or it's the on-demand lessons or it's calls like this. And so I want to play around with you a little bit, Taja, and ask you, what is the number one thing on your mind related to your LSAT prep where we could look back 3 to 5 years from now and say this coaching conversation changed everything for you? What would need to happen?
I would say what would need to happen, I guess how I go about the logical reasoning section, because I master games really well. The reading section, I do okay. I still need improvement on that, but it's just the logical reasoning, how I go about it. It's just on test day, when I look at the questions, I have this, I don't know, what do you call it? This default habitual mindset of going in order. And originally I would just read the stimulus first and then just go in order. And then just skip around if I find difficult stimulus. But it's just finding the right technique for me, I guess, in handling logical reasoning sections and doing well on them at the same time.
So what are you doing right now? Let's say you open the exam, logical reasonings first. What's the first thing you do?
Well, before this section, because I actually started looking at the questions first. Okay, when I open the test booklet, I look at the first question, I read the stimulus, I analyze that stimulus, then I read the question. And then depending on the question type, I have a strategy for that certain question. And then I analyze the stimulus, I prep phrase, and then I tackle the answer choices. And I look at the answer choices one by one. And then I get stuck for some reason. I think I lose my strategy once I start looking at the answer choices. I think that's what gets to me. And then sometimes I don't go back to the stimulus. I think that's another thing, because I think looking back at the stimulus kind of gives me a little bit of confidence to know what kind of answer I need to look for with the given question.
Right. Okay. So do you think it relates to the method of reasoning in the stimulus or the question type? Where do you think your strategy is falling apart?
I think, like, I know for the strengthened questions, I think I'm able to identify the conclusion and the premise. And looking for new information, I think where my strategy falls apart is whether I know looking for new information is important. I think reading the question word for word or the answer choice word for word in its entirety and the focus of the question, I'm able to get that in. It's just what kind of answers am I looking for like a strengthened question? I know I need to look for new information. I know I need to look for something that bolsters evidence, depending on what the stimulus is talking about. Whether that stimulus, there's a gap in the stimulus or there isn't a gap in the stimulus. So I have like 3 ways of tackling the question. It's just like I have it phrased in my mind, but when I look at the answer choices, it might not entirely be that prep phrase I was looking for.
Right. There's a variety of ways to strengthen an argument as you're listing here.
Right. So if it's not the prep phrase that I'm looking for, then I automatically get stuck and I don't know where to go or proceed from there, whether to go back into the stimulus. And I don't like taking the answer choices and plugging it back into the stimulus. I don't think that's a very practical approach to it, you know? So I just get stuck when my prep phrases are not going where I think they should go.
Right. There's a variety of potential correct answers for a lot, if not most different question types.
Right.
And so what you predict, it's one potential correct answer likely, but it's not the only one.
Yes, absolutely. So I have like 3 prep phrases, and then, you know, and that's another thing, like writing. I don't like writing too much. I feel like that's a waste of time. So like I have couple of prep phrases, but when I look at the answer choices, then I feel like one of my prep phrases I have memorized in my mind, it kind of dissipates. So it's kind of like, you know, okay, which prep phrase am I working with? You know, so little things like that kind of catches me off guard. So I would love to improve on that area, so to speak, in arguments. But yeah.
Well, first off, I don't think it's little. It's half the exam, right? So
right.
we've got to start here. We got to focus on this. I think this is our agenda for today.
Okay.
Now, it sounds like you've got a lot of analysis of the question type and the answer choices, and as well as your prediction. But what about your understanding of the stimulus itself? How do you feel about your level of understanding of the argument?
Oh, for like small, I don't want to say small, but like simple, like stimulus, excuse me, or stimuli. Is that the plural word for stimulus?
Well, they're not testing that though.
Okay. Anyway, like stimulus with like 3 or 4 sentences in it, like the simple ones, I can understand, you know, and, you know, if the language is very coherent and clear and, you know, easy to understand, I'm able to understand and analyze what the author is saying or what the author believes. When it comes to like complex, maybe like with certain language, like maybe like in economics or like science stuff, and just complex language, just breaking it down and trying to understand what that's saying, I do need work on that. I was surprised to get some of the questions I was working on for Must Be True and Most Strongly Supported. After doing some more of those, I understand the strategy, so I just stuck to that strategy. And once I was able to apply that, the answer choices are not that bad because I understand like the patterns of the answer choices and what they do for that. So like understanding that strategy is great. It's just when it comes to certain arguments with like heavy language or like heavy dense text material, try not to get lost in it, trying to make it succinct, like without having to actually write it down, you know, but just have it very clear in my mind on what each sentence is saying and what the author believes. Right. I can nail the conclusion and the premises down. It's just, you know, that basic thing. What does the author believe in that like long, heavy stimulus?
Yeah. Now, with these more complex arguments with the difficult wording, when you encounter them, are you taking the time to thoroughly understand them, or are you going on to the questions and the choices?
I take time to thoroughly understand them. Like when I'm reading the first sentence of the heavy stimulus, that's the thing. I don't even know if I should. I do take time to read the stimulus, but I don't know if I should, when I first read the stimulus, just break that first sentence down, understand what that means. And then when I read the next sentence, break that down, understand what that means. And the third sentence, break that down. What I do is I like to try to like grasp the stimulus as a whole first, like read it through one time and then read it a second time to break it down. So then, you know, that's another thing I struggle with, like the strategy in itself on how to break that heavy stimulus down.
Yeah.
I struggle with that too.
And it's also a valid question. Should you break it down? Do you need to what extent?
Right. Like, I don't want to spend like a good 3 minutes trying to break down what the author is saying. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to, I read slowly. I feel like reading slowly, I think that helps tremendously. Even segue into reading comp with like heavy law or legal passages, I have to read that slowly, otherwise I'm not going to understand anything. But I know, what is the right strategy in analyzing a heavy stimulus? Is it just reading slow before the first time and make sure you understand everything, or just breaking the sentence one by one for the first time? So I have to. I don't understand what kind of strategy I need for that.
Well, we need the strategy that lets you get the question right without doing more work than is necessary.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I'm imagining as you were talking, I was thinking back to this class I took in college, and I saw in your email signature that you've studied philosophy. So
Oh.
I'm thinking of deconstructionism, which
Yeah. I think one of my philosophy courses, I cannot entirely remember. I graduated in like 2016, but we touched lightly on deconstructionism, but I did take a logic class. It was a requirement for philosophy majors. So I understand like if A then B then B then C, like that transitive property, logical reasoning stuff. But yeah, I was like, I have the analysis. It's, and, I studied philosophy, so I kind of am used to heavy text. It's just, there's something else, like, is it the stretch? Like, I don't know what it is because I do have the analysis. It's just, you know, something is just blocking me from, you know, getting to where I need to be.
right now I brought up deconstructionism because I'm imagining that your philosophy major is actually some of the top scores on the LSAT. That's one of the majors that's most strongly correlated with top LSAT scores. So the fact that you're a philosophy major indicates that you are likely to do well on the LSAT because you're used to navigating dense, difficult text.
Right.
Now, I wonder if maybe when you talk about breaking it down, if you might be prone to doing more work than is necessary, because these are very densely packed, tight paragraphs, chock full of information. And you could spend, I remember when I took a deconstructionism class, we could spend one entire 2-hour class session on one word.
Right.
That's how, but we don't have time to do that here, right?
Right. I think you're absolutely right. I think you just hit the nail on the head because I actually do. And this is just like, I guess me personally, I actually do more work and sometimes I go above and beyond what I need to do. And I think that is the reason why I'm not doing good on timing, so to speak. And I think that's why, I struggle because I actually do more work than I need to.
So how might you change your approach going forward with one of these dense logical reasoning passages?
I would say do a little bit of experimentation, reading the stimulus firsthand and going slow on heavy text. I'll try that, understanding what the author is saying while identifying the conclusion and the premises and how they, what's it called? How they relate to each other, so to speak. And finding what the author believes there and then moving on to the question. And understanding what the question is saying, and then prep phrasing. Um, I don't know. That's a good question. These are just thoughts I'm having in my brain right now. But yeah, I guess doing some experimentation. I really don't know how to go about it. I feel like I actually have to do one of those heavy tasks and see what kind of strategy works with me without doing so much.
Yeah, well, if your current approach isn't working, experimentation is always the way to go. So you never know. You may stumble across a new method that works better for you.
Right.
Games is more regimented, but for reasoning and reading comp, it is a bit more personal and different things work for different people. One thing I can suggest for you is as an exercise, a stimulus-focused exercise would be to look at categorizing the pieces of the stimulus as evidence, conclusion, sub-conclusion, counter premise, or filler.
Okay.
Try to break it down in that way so you can see the underlying structure of the argument. Sometimes it'll be a sandwich with evidence, conclusion, more evidence. And they might start off with a counter premise or with filler. But categorizing the pieces of information can allow you to make use of the information in front of you without having to go too deep into the weeds on a given topic.
Right.
Another thing you could do when it comes to densely worded answer choices is, as an exercise, just define all 5 choices, untimed, of course. But
Okay.
for abstract language, I'm thinking of flaw questions with abstract language, or role of the statement, method of reasoning, part argument type questions. These are difficult vocabulary words.
Yeah.
And they come up again and again, though. So if you don't understand it thoroughly, you need to take the time, because it will come up again.
Right.
You look up on define X in Google, look it up, define what it means, try to, as an exercise as well, see if you could make up your own example of what that answer choice would look like.
Right.
Like if they have abstractly worded a necessary sufficient confusion flaw or the gambler's fallacy, for example, make up your own example related to the topic at hand in the stimulus of what that might look like in practice. It's a way to make it more real world relatable for yourself. And these drills, they're powerful. It's not enough to just do exam after exam and measure your results and review it. That's great.
Right.
But to work on the fundamentals through drilling is really important too.
Right. Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure, Taja. Well, we're just about up for today, but is there anything else in general that you have questions about, or any way I could support you going forward?
I did have a couple of questions that I sent you via email. I'll just ask the general one, making predictions.
Yeah.
And just improving on them. I had this one, like, as I said before, some prep phrases, it's kind of like, I have some key terms, but it's kind of like, I don't know if, like, I'm not too confident on those certain keywords until I actually look at the answer choices. So I guess improving prep phrasing and predictions and logical reasoning questions.
Yeah, sure. So improving the predictions, part of that will simply come with practice and increased familiarity with the variety of methods of reasoning.
Okay.
LSAT is a test of pattern recognition. And so through your review process, if you can understand the question on a deeper level, topic aside, focused on the method of reasoning, the general underlying principle, how they go about making their argument, then you'll be in a better position to see it in the future on a different question with a different topic. Because the LSAT, it's too strictly timed to reinvent the wheel in the moment on test day. So
Right.
it's almost as if someone who's done even just a couple dozen exams is in a far better position than someone who's seeing it for the first time, even if their aptitude is the same, just because one has all that experience
Yes.
and the other one doesn't. And so if you can expose yourself to a wide enough variety of questions and you understand them well enough, you'll already kind of know where they're going, because they're lazy. They kind of repeat themselves again and again.
Yeah.
And there are simple methods of reasoning. There are also more complex methods of reasoning that only come up every now and then. Like it might come up every 7 or 10 exams. And
Right.
so you have to have a wide variety of experience to see it again a second time and a third time for it to start to click.
Okay, cool.
But predictions on most question types are a good way to be thinking, because it means that you're reading actively, like you're engaging with it as if you were having a conversation with somebody. So I do recommend trying to read with predictions in mind, not for all question types. Like for inference questions, it isn't always possible. But
Right. Or like diagramming questions, you know.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, diagramming rarely. But flaw questions, definitely pre-phrasing. Strengthen and weaken, you might want to try it there as well, depending on the situation, but also be open to broadening your prediction to a more general category of possibilities rather than one specific prediction.
Okay.
And then also realize that they could go in a different direction too. There's, the real world is complex. There's lots of ways they can problematize something or shore up a gap.
Right. Thank you. I'll take this to heart moving forward in my studies.
Of course, Tasha. Well, it's been great having you in class. I hope to see you again in future classes coming up. I have another one tomorrow night.
Okay, got it. All right. Thank you so much, Steve. I'll see you tomorrow.
My pleasure. See you then. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.